The morning had begun like any other for the coastal guards. Captain Mike Caldwell sipped his coffee as his crew maintained their usual vigilance. But the day would soon take a turn into the unknown. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video with your friends. Their radar systems had picked up something strange, a blue vessel floating just off their coastline, and nothing about it seemed to add up. The mysterious boat was nowhere to be found on their radar, and that alone made it stand out. Even as they drew closer, the vessel's appearance didn't make sense. It was much bigger than originally thought, with few windows, and its blue metallic surface blended almost seamlessly with the sea. A surreal calm settled over the team as they tried to make sense of the anomaly. The blue boat appeared to be isolated, no other vessels nearby, no clear origin, and no communication. As Captain Caldwell's crew approached, their curiosity grew. Something was deeply wrong. "It shouldn't be out here," Caldwell muttered under his breath. It was too far from any standard route for it to be a commercial ship, and it didn't respond to radio calls. No one knew what it was or how it had appeared out here in the open water. The crew leaned in to get a closer look, their radar pinging weakly but consistently, only detecting their own boat. The strange vessel remained invisible to all but their eyes. As their boat drew nearer, the crew worked together to pull the strange blue vessel closer. But the boat wouldn't budge. It was as if something on the ship was holding it in place, pushing the crew's vessel forward instead. "What is this thing?" Captain Caldwell asked aloud, his voice laced with nervous tension. One of the crew members, his nerves tingling with unease, spoke up. "We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg here." That remark would turn out to be more prophetic than anyone could have imagined. After a few tense moments, their two ships finally collided with a jarring crunch that echoed across the water. The impact rattled the crew members, sending them scrambling to stay steady. The cargo ship had barely been scratched, but the mysterious boat had taken some damage. Its rubber bumpers were torn and splintered wood littered the water. But what happened next was even stranger. After sitting still for a few moments, the boat suddenly revved its engine and rammed the cargo ship again, this time with even more force. The repeated motion was unnerving, as if the boat had some sort of will behind it, like it was doing this on purpose. "We need to check this out," one of the crew members, Rodriguez, finally said, his face pale with a mix of anxiety and curiosity. Captain Caldwell nodded. The situation was growing stranger by the minute. Both men climbed down the slick metal ladder to reach the fishing boat. As they stepped onto the deck, they immediately noticed the eerie silence around them. The boat was devoid of any crew. No one was there, and there was no sign of a struggle. It seemed like a ghost ship. But how could that be possible? Caldwell and Rodriguez pressed forward, slowly making their way to the cockpit. They tried to peer inside through the small windows at the top, but the view was almost pitch black, with only a faint cold light coming through. "We need to open it up," said Brendan, the senior crew member. Reluctantly, they forced the hatch open, revealing a ladder that led downward into darkness. The lack of any sounds or movement made their nerves grow tenser, but they pressed on. The team stood at the top of the hatch, the ship eerily still beneath them. With a deep breath, both men descended into the vessel. When they reached the lower levels, confusion set in. There was still no sign of life. "There's no one here," John said, his voice trembling slightly as he tried to make sense of the situation. "So, who's been driving this thing?" Caldwell began speaking into his walkie-talkie, trying to reach his crew back on the cargo ship, but the static was overpowering. The signal was lost. Frustration grew as they realized that the connection was cut off. Suddenly, a sharp creak echoed through the vessel. Both men looked up in alarm, just in time to see the hatch above them slam shut on its own. A wave of panic washed over them. "Brendan, what's happening?" came the voice of their captain through the walkie-talkie, but they couldn't respond. Communication was completely cut off. The two men looked at each other, their faces drained of color. The hatch was sealed, and they were trapped inside. "What do we do?" John asked, his voice quivering. Before they could respond, the boat began to rumble. They both stumbled as the vessel started to sink, the dark waters creeping around them. "We need to get out now," Brendan shouted. They scrambled to the ladder, desperately trying to open the hatch, but it wouldn't budge. The panic in their chests grew heavier as the boat dipped lower and lower. It was no longer just a strange vessel, it was a submarine. A chilling realization hit both of them. This wasn't a normal boat at all. This was something far more dangerous, and it had submerged without warning, dragging them with it. As the boat continued its descent into the depths, Brendan's thoughts raced. He couldn't help but think back to the moment they first encountered the blue vessel, the way it blended perfectly with the ocean, the way it resisted all attempts at communication, and now the fact that it had somehow submerged itself beneath the waves without any logical explanation. This was no ordinary boat. It was some kind of advanced, stealthy submarine, but who operated it and for what purpose? But Brendan didn't have much time to dwell on it. The submarine began moving again, pulling itself through the water at an incredible speed. The dark interior of the vessel made it almost impossible to tell what direction they were heading, but Brendan knew one thing for sure. They had no idea what they had just gotten themselves into. They were now trapped on a submerged vessel, at the mercy of whoever had sent it out to sea. The submarine rumbled as it descended deeper, its metal frame creaking under the pressure of the ocean's depths. Brendan and John huddled together, desperate for a way out, their minds racing. The vessel was moving on its own, but they had no control. The air was thick with tension as they tried to make sense of the situation. Suddenly, the hatch above them creaked open again, and 3 men descended, carrying large, bulky packages. Brendan and John quickly ducked behind the console, watching in stunned silence as the men moved with purpose, unloading the mysterious cargo from the submarine. Each trip brought more packages, all stacked with precision. The 2 guards exchanged a nervous glance. This wasn't just smuggling, it was something far more sinister. Once the men were gone, Brendan and John realized their chance. The hatch was still open, and they had to act fast. Climbing the ladder, they emerged into the cold ocean air only to find themselves on an enormous oil rig. The workers were busy unloading supplies, but they were too distracted to notice the 2 intruders. The men made their way through the rig, staying hidden until they stumbled upon a chilling sight, a well-dressed man overseeing the operation. He cracked open one of the large packages, revealing stacks of cash, and then a knife was shoved inside, pulling out a substance, Dailydose. The pieces fell into place. This was a trafficking ring operating under the guise of an oil rig. Realizing they couldn't let this operation continue, Brendan and John managed to contact their crew, who arrived with reinforcements just in time. The traffickers were arrested and the operation was dismantled. The 2 coastal guards were hailed as heroes for uncovering the largest criminal network they'd ever seen. It was a close call, but in the end the truth had been revealed and justice was served.